Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and we're back with another real estate video. Today I'm talking about my most frustrating, probably worst investment I've made. Actually, that's not true. I've made worse investments, but this is probably my most frustrating one from a real estate standpoint, and it's the only property I've ever bought outside of Colorado, outside of my local market as well. So the tenant at this property currently owes me over $14,000, and the eviction has not been started yet. I'll talk about why that's happening, where this property's at, and some progress that might or might not be being made in regards to trying to get this tenant evicted. It's just been a crazy story, and maybe a warning of such to people who want to invest out of state. You can still make money, you can still have good investments out of state, but it also can be a little riskier when you're not local. And if I was local, I would not be having this issue, and I'll talk about that too. And it can be a word of warning about where you invest and what areas you invest in as well. If you missed it, I had a video that went over the top states for landlords. They went up 1 through 50. Also listed the worst states for landlords. And this one was in Ohio, which actually Ohio isn't the worst state for landlords, but my property happens to be in Cleveland, which the city itself has gotten much worse for landlords. We'll talk about that too. So love the likes, love the comments, love the shares. Keep those coming. And hopefully most of my future videos are more positive and have better results than this one. I do have a lot of commercial properties, residential properties, and some businesses. And I have some possible new ventures I'm starting here soon too. Nothing's official yet, but I've got a few things in the works, so that should be exciting to share with everyone as well. All right, so this is my house right here in Cleveland. And I bought this house through a turnkey rental provider, and that provider does not exist anymore. You cannot buy a rental from them. And it was actually someone I knew who ran that company, and they had sold me this property saying it was repaired, rented, all ready to go. It turns out it was rented, but it had not been repaired. There was a tenant in there when I bought it who was not paying rent, had to go through an eviction when I first bought it. This was 2015, and then make some repairs. Now, that company did help pay for those repairs, which was good, but I was very misleading about purchasing the property and that it would be repaired and rented, because it took 8 months for this to happen where I wasn't receiving any rent when I first bought the property. But that wasn't the big issue. That's actually very small compared to what happened after that. So along the way, I paid $45,000 for this property. I bought it in my IRA, so you can buy real estate in your IRA. I have a self-directed IRA. Now, if you have like a Ameritrade or something, they will also tell you have a self-directed IRA, but you can't buy real estate in it. But there are companies that you can buy real estate in that are self-directed, that will self-direct your IRA. I think UDirect IRA is who I use. They've been a little frustrating too, but I don't know if it's their issue. It's like a whole bunch of people coming together to just make this situation a mess. So I bought in my IRA, and when you do that, I can't write checks. I can't sign stuff myself. It all has to go through the IRA. All rent, all repairs, everything has to go through the IRA. And any money coming in, any money going out for the property has to come from the IRA, and that can be kind of a pain. But I guess, if you really want to have a property in your retirement account, that's one way to do it. I just did it because I had some money there from the past. I wasn't doing anything with it. Thought this would be a good experiment to kind of show through YouTube, my blog, how it went working with a turnkey company, and hasn't been so great. I do have a turnkey company who I recommend now. If you're interested, you can email me, mark@investformore.com, or just search for turnkey rental and invest for more, who does better now. They've been in business for many years. I know many people who have used them. Some of the other ones aren't so great. So just be careful if you're going to invest out of state. Be very, very careful about who you use. So along the house was fixed up. We found a new tenant along the way, switched property management companies like 2 or 3 times because the first company this turnkey rental used stopped doing property management. They moved it to another person. That person did it for a while. They stopped doing property management. They switched it to a new company, and that was Monument Property Management, who I could not recommend any less. I try not to be real negative and bash people, but I would never recommend Monument real estate or Monument Property Management in Cleveland has been absolutely horrible. They are unprofessional. Like Byron Thompson, the head of it, literally responded to one of my emails with "liar, liar, pants on fire." When this was after I had CC'd him because nobody's responding to my previous emails, and I said, "Hey, can you please help?" And he said, "You don't need to CC me. My team will take care of it." And I said I was a managing broker, and that's probably not the best way to handle things. And he said, "Liar, liar, pants on fire." It was crazy. I have it in writing. But anyway, Monument has done almost nothing to help me with this property. Then what happened was we had it rented. It was switched over to them while this person was rented. I believe it's Section 8 or some kind of housing assistance through Cleveland. And COVID hit. So that tenant had paid rent up until COVID. COVID came along, and the city of Cleveland or Ohio, said, hey, we'll pay rent for people. So this tenant stopped paying their rent, and Cleveland or Ohio, I'm not sure how it all mashed in there, paid their rent for like a year. Well, then they stopped doing that program, and when they stopped paying this tenant's rent, they just never paid. Never paid. It is, I don't know if we've gotten any rent since COVID, but we had, like I said, maybe a year, maybe a little bit longer of rent paid right after COVID. And the tenant has asked for repairs to be made and different things at the house during this time, and asked for different things. Which is funny because Monument Property Management has gone on and done some of those repairs and charged me for them. But then when I asked them if they've talked to the tenant, if they've made any contact, if they're still there, they don't know. And they say the tenant won't talk to them, and they say the tenant won't respond to anything. Even though the tenant and them have been coordinating repairs, it's weird. And so I was trying to do an eviction at the start of 2022. This is a long time ago, like I said, because they hadn't paid rent, and Monument just would not hold on, while I'm talking we'll look at the street view. Monument kept saying I needed lead-based paint inspection and registration done. Well, the house is built in 2005. It doesn't need that. Per the city law, it doesn't need that. I told them that probably 6 times, and they kept saying they couldn't evict because of that. I literally ended up leaving them a review on their Google page after all this happened too. And they said the same thing and said, well, we couldn't evict because of the lead-based paint thing. They still said it even after all this. And so they didn't know the law for lead-based paint, or they just weren't paying attention. I don't know which is worse. So anyway, here's the house, which actually doesn't look too bad until you go around the rest of the neighborhood. I've been told this is an interesting place in Cleveland to have a rental. So we finally got to a point where I thought I could evict, and they were going to bring it to court and go through that process. And then they said, well, we can't do an eviction because you have an out-of-state corporation. Well, it's not a corporation, it's my IRA, and they're not registered in Ohio. I'm like, what do you mean they're not registered? And Monument Property Management said, well, to do an eviction in Cleveland, the judge will require whatever entity owns the house to be registered in Ohio. And this created just a crazy mess. And basically, I talked to my IRA, said, hey, are you guys registered in Ohio? Can we do this? And they said, no, we're not registered in Ohio, and our company is not going to register in Ohio. I'm like, okay, so what do I do then? They said, we're not sure. Maybe talk to a lawyer in Cleveland to figure it out. And so I actually talked to the lawyer for Monument Property Management, and he said, yeah, I don't really know what to do. You need to be registered. If you're not, the judge is just going to throw out this case immediately, and you're not going to be able to evict. So I'm like, great. So I did some more research, some more digging, and it turns out if I were to elect a statutory agent for my IRA, then I could evict. Well, Monument Property Management said they would not do it. They refused to do it. I talked to my IRA again, said, hey, I'm running into issues. Can you help me? They said, okay, we did some research. Here's some different people to call, lawyers to call. Called them all. None of them would do it. A couple of them would not even talk to me until I paid them like $500 to have a consultation. And then they wouldn't guarantee that they would do what I want or not. So I was like, can you just at least give me an idea if this is possible? It wouldn't tell me. Oh, nice trampoline they have. From that point, I was really stuck and not sure what to do. And so I made a video on YouTube, and actually I had lots of people help and reach out to me on YouTube. A couple people said they could help and, weren't that big of a help. Referred me to more lawyers who also said they didn't know what to do. They couldn't help with it. And so finally, someone referred me to HomeX Property Management, which has been fantastic. So shout out to HomeX. They've been super helpful, helped me a ton through this, and hopefully we're making progress. But I'm transferring from Monument Property Management, to HomeX. And they got me in touch with, or they could talk to their lawyer, figured out, hey, this is what we should do, and yes, we'll be your statutory agent or whatever it's called. And I'm like, great. So I started that process. And they said, this is what you have to do. Register your IRA as a corporation in Ohio and then designate us as the agents. So I did that, paid my fee, went online, did all the stuff, and thinking, hey, we're getting close now. We're gonna get this eviction started. And about an hour later, I got a refund from the state of Ohio saying, here's your money back. You can't register your IRA as look at that beautiful bakery building, as a corporation. It's an IRA. It's not a corporation. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so what do I do? So actually, I talked to someone at the state of Ohio, Secretary of State, and they're actually very nice and very helpful. And they said, you can't register as a corporation. You're an IRA. I'm like, I know, but I told them the situation, why I had to register, what was going on. And they're like, okay, register as a trust. And I'm like, okay, because it actually says trust in my IRA name. And so I registered as a trust, and it got kicked back out, and my money was refunded to me. I said, hey, what's going on? They're like, yeah, we tried that, and our the main people said, you can't do it. You're not a trust. You're an IRA. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so what do I do? And so this was been going back and forth for weeks and weeks and weeks. And finally, we talked to our legal team, and we decided you can just register your name in Ohio. And so I registered. Oh, I can't go that way. Okay, I registered the name of my IRA in Ohio. It got kicked back down and refunded. And like, oh, it's because you have the trust in your name. It's not a trust, but we think it's a trust because. I'm like, okay. So then I talked to them again, waited while more time, and they came back and said, okay, register a name, but don't put trust in it. And then in the notes below, note what you're also doing business as for that IRA. And so I did that. I submitted my paperwork, and that was about a week ago. I haven't gotten a refund yet. So maybe, just maybe, we're getting to a point where I might be able to do an eviction. We'll see. Now, the tricky part is my IRA name will be registered in Ohio as doing business, or note that this is also my full name. I just hope the courts accept it, and they're not like, oh, this isn't really registered in Ohio. Your name's just here. So we'll see. It's kind of a crazy situation. And basically, Ohio doesn't require this, but Cleveland requires any company, any person doing business, any trust, any IRA to be registered in Ohio. And they will throw out the eviction if it's not registered in Ohio. If it's a corporation, it'd be pretty simple to register it. If it was a trust, it'd probably be pretty simple to register it. Since it's an IRA, it makes it extremely difficult to register it. It's not a company, it's not a trust. So it's just been a mess and not a whole lot of fun. So during this whole time, the new property management company stopped by the house, tried to talk to the tenant, tried to offer him cash for keys. No dice, nothing. They couldn't make any contact. So again, it was, oh, look at that. They're building new stuff. This neighborhood is going awesome now. Maybe I need to keep it. Anyway, I might sell it after all this is done. But anyway, it was interesting how Monument Property Management was charging me these repair costs, and they said they checked CO alarms and smoke detector alarms when we're doing these inspections. They're charging me for all of that, of course, but at the same time telling me they couldn't contact the tenant, and the tenant wouldn't respond to them. And then HomeX also says the tenant won't respond to them, won't contact them. So I don't know. There's a whole lot of weird stuff going on with Monument. We had some other issues in the past where they could not account for thousands of dollars of checks that they claim they sent to me that I never received and were deducted from my account. And they wouldn't help me there either until I threatened to go through real estate commission. And then all of a sudden that money magically appeared in my account. So there was a lot of issues there. But like I said, HomeX has been great. I've been working with them for a little bit, so not a ton of experience, but at least they're willing to help me through some of this. And Monument Property Management has not been great. And eventually, maybe, just maybe, I'll be in a position to do an eviction. The tenant can be gone, and then I will probably sell this house. I'm not for sure on what I want to do there, but I think my experience in Cleveland has not been that great. Like I said, Ohio isn't horrible for landlords on my ranking. I actually have my ranking right here. If I go to my Excel sheet, I have a much prettier ranking on the blog in the video. But if I go over here, this is my weighted score. We can see that Ohio is number 14. No, 23. Sorry, they're number 23, ranked for most landlord-friendly states. So not horrible. Cleveland, on the other hand, as a city, might be ranked as one of the worst based on my experience. And as I've been doing this, I've had not just one, but probably 5 to 10 different people, different lawyers, different investors tell me, if you are an out-of-state investor, do not invest in Cleveland. If you're local, if you're in the area, it's much easier. Maybe it makes sense. But if you're out of state, it's just the judges are crazy. They won't let you evict. They do everything they can to keep tenants in the properties. Doesn't matter if they pay or not. And so I am definitely experiencing that myself right now. Why it's okay for tenants to just stay in properties for free, I don't know. Why judges are pushing that, I don't know. But it obviously makes people like me or other out-of-state investors not want to invest in that city. And if we don't invest in that city, that probably means there's fewer rentals, fewer properties to rent, and ultimately that usually pushes prices up. That's what happens. You make it harder on landlords, harder on investors, and prices go up because either they need a bigger incentive to invest there, or there's just fewer properties. And we can see, there are quite a few properties here that need some work, need fixed up. And if prices are really low and there's no demand to buy those properties, they're just going to stay abandoned and dilapidated. They're not going to be fixed up. Whereas when prices go up, when it's easier to make money, to do things, to do business, then investors come along, fix up those properties, add inventory. And a lot of times that's what I've done in the past. That either new or just rehabbed. But out of state is definitely a little trickier. So that's the update on my Cleveland property. Hopefully I'll have good news in the next month or two, and maybe we'll have tenants out of there. It obviously is not advantageous to sell the property with tenants in there who haven't paid rent for so long. You would sell at a massive, massive discount. So I think it is definitely worth it to go through this process and hopefully evict them and get it vacant. And if it needs any work, fix it up a little bit and sell it then. I'm not expecting it to be worth a ton. I've had estimates from $75,000 to $100,000 for the property. Still better than what I bought it for, which was $45,000. At the time I bought it, it's probably worth more like $25,000. But again, that's what you have to watch out for with a lot of these turnkey companies, and where they will sell to out-of-state investors for actually more than their property's worth when they're supposedly rented and in great shape and managed, which should be an advantage. But if they're not, then it can add to some struggles and some interesting times. So we'll see what happens. If you want to subscribe and follow along on this story, love to have you. And we'll have some other stories on more local Colorado investments, businesses, flips, rentals, all that great stuff. Thanks for watching. Be back soon.